Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And before I start, I'd just like to declare an interest in this debate because I am a member of the Whole Staff Superannuation Scheme, and for the sake of this debate, I refer to it as the BCSSS. And before I go on, I just want to say a special thank you to the BCSSS Facebook campaign group, who have been a great source of support and advice, and they represent over 2,500 members of this scheme, and I'm sure that many of them will be watching this debate right now. Now, all the arguments, Madam Deputy Speaker, for a fair deal for the BCSSS members have been heard before. So I want to take this opportunity to speak as an ex-coal miner and the only member of the BCSSS, I think, in this Parliament. And yes, I have an interest in this, a financial interest, but I feel that I am qualified to speak up on behalf of members of the BCSSS. I know the honourable member for Blyth and Ashington is here. He's an ex-coal miner as well. I'm sure he will support many of the things I have to say. I'm the last generation of coal miners in my family. I followed my dad, my granddad, my great-granddad and my great-great-granddads into the pits in Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. In fact, I cannot think of any male member before me in my family that didn't spend some time underground. Now, I worked at 4 different pits, and miners will tell you that the best pit they worked at was the first pit, and my first pit was Sutton Colliery in Ashfield, North Nottinghamshire. And I started there about a year after the miners' strike in the 80s, and it was a great pit. But this is a pit where just a few decades before, sadly, 5 men were killed in an explosion. I went on to do my coal-based training at Cresswell Colliery in Derbyshire. Again, another pit that had a disaster. This is a pit where, in 1950, 80 boys and men lost their lives in a fire underground. Yet we've had all these disasters, all these horrific accidents, nasty things that go on down a coal mine. Yet after this, men and boys still go down the pit, they go down the black hole, and they do a shift digging coal out to fuel our nation. And it's hard, Madam Deputy Speaker, to describe what it's like working underground. There's nothing else like it. It's dark, it's dangerous, it can be red hot in some places, it can be freezing cold in others. There's no toilets, as the member opposite will tell you. You just dig an hole and then cover it up. It's hard to explain what it's like crawling up and down a coal face that's 29 inches high, about as high as that, 250 yards long, with a shearing machine spitting coal out, and dust and heat and oil. It's a horrible feeling. It's hard to explain what it's like to carry a steel ring on your shoulder, a girder, with your mate on uneven ground in dusty conditions. It's hard to explain what it's like to bandage up a workmate who's just been trapped. There's a big chunk ripped out of him, lost a few fingers, half a foot. You then have to put him on a stretcher and carry him out the pit to the pit bottom. On one occasion, that was 7 miles as the pit I worked out. 7 miles underground. That's from here to the edge of London. But that's what we did. We did that for a living, day in, day out. We didn't moan. And towards the end of my mining career, the last 3 years I think it was, I became deputy underground. That's a job where you're responsible for the health and safety of the men in your district. And when I became a deputy, I was transferred from the miners' pension scheme to the BCSSS scheme. I didn't have any say in it, they just put me in it, that's what they did. And whilst we continued working, digging the coal to fuel the nation and keep the lights on, all we asked for was a fair day's pay for a fair day's wage. Now, the pits are long gone now, but there are still thousands of ex-miners and their widows throughout the coalfield communities, and all they want... I would certainly give way.
My constituency of Shield Forest is the second largest membership of BCSS in the country, and almost 40% of BCSS membership is women, made up of women who were formerly employed in the mining industry and women who are the spouse of members that have sadly died. Does the honourable member agree with me that it is vitally important that the government delivers justice for this scheme, not only for constituencies like ours in Nottinghamshire, but also for women?
I thank the honourable lady for intervention. Yes, I will come on to the women who worked in our industry a little bit later on in my speech, but she's absolutely correct. All we ask for nowadays, now the pits have gone, we've still got the communities, all that we ask for now is a fair day's pay from our own pot of money. And that pot of money is the 2.3 billion investment reserve fund. It's our money. We paid it in. And all we're asking for is for the government to give it us back.
Madam Deputy Speaker, first of all, can I commend the gentleman for Ashfield for bringing this forward? The stories that he's told about the mines, I would never have known that, although I would have known through the honourable gentleman who has told stories in this debate in this House in the past. So I thank him for his service and for that. But does the honourable member not agree that whilst we congratulate Nationwide Building Society for doing the right thing and sharing the bonus that they earn with their customers, I have great respect, Minister, the fact that governments seem to be dragging their heels and seeing mine workers receiving rightful dividends from their back-breaking, life-altering work is jarring, and it must be addressed as a matter of urgency.
Thank the honourable member for his intervention, and as always he makes a fantastic contribution, and I agree with every single word the honourable member says. Now, the Labour Party was founded on the backs of coal miners, and I think it's time for the current Labour government to repay those miners. And remember, the miners paid their union sub. They helped bankroll the Labour Party. And let's be honest, the Labour Party have, supplied some good ex-mining MPs in this House. There's one sat there. One used to sit there. Don't agree with the politics, but great MPs. And let's remind ourselves that in the scheme, there's about 4,000 or 5,000 women, a part of the BCSSS scheme. And we couldn't have done our job on the ground if it wasn't for these women who did a great job. Then there's the widows of the ex-miners who would love to see a few extra quid in their bank account each month when fuel bills are going through the roof. There's about 2,000 members of the BCSSS die every single year, and there's less than 40,000 members still in the scheme. It won't be that long before a giveaway.
And I know that the member for Ashfield and the House will know that I'm a big supporter of returning reserve into the fund, particularly for this reason that many members are dying. But I wonder if the member for Ashfield could tell us why, when he was sat on the government benches for a number of years as the then Conservative member for Ashfield, and indeed as the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party on this side of the House, and given the promises that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has made in Mansfield, in my constituency, in the 2019 election, given everything that was said and sitting on the government benches, why he did nothing to correct this injustice, given that so many members of the scheme are passing away on an annual basis. I wonder if you might agree with me that it's somewhat hypocritical to be championing this issue at this point.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. Maybe if he'd studied Hansard, paid a little bit more attention to this Parliament during the past 5 years, he will have known about the representations I've made. In fact, I had my own adjournment debate in this chamber on the MPF scheme. I met with the former Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer to discuss the mine workers' pension scheme and the miners' all. So it's a little bit unfair for the honourable member for Mansfield to try and score point over a very serious debate. I would have hoped, Madam Deputy Speaker, that would have come here and supported me in this debate instead of political point scoring. And I think it's not a good look, and I'm sure that the BCSSS members in Mansfield and across Ashfield won't be very happy with that contribution. As I said, there's less than 40,000 members left in the scheme. I'm just going to make a bit of progress, please, first. There's 40,000 members left in the scheme, and it won't be that long before there's just a few thousand of us left. And meanwhile, miners and widows die without getting the justice that they deserve. I'm 58 years old. I know you might find that hard to believe. But I am one of the youngest members left in the scheme. Many members are over 70 years old. In fact, the average age of a member in the scheme is 75, and time is running out for these old colliers to get what they deserve. And it's worth remembering, I'll make some progress please, it is worth remembering that when the last member dies, the billions, as with the MPS, the billions of pounds in the fund go straight to the Exchequer, to the Treasury, to the government of the day, and they can spend that money on whatever they like. I'll give way.
I'm grateful to the women. I just want to put on record that we have seen a transformative intervention by the Labour government on the mine workers pension scheme, and over 100,000 former mine workers have already received their first pension increase in November last year, and I wonder if you might want to congratulate this government on that innovation.
Yeah, I think if thanks to the honourable member for his intervention, if he just showed a little bit more patience, I'll move on to that a little bit later on. Now, the previous Labour manifesto stated that reserve fund of both the MPS and the BCSSS would be released to members. Yet the BCSSS was omitted from the manifesto in 2024. So maybe when the Minister stands up at the end of the debate, she can explain to the House why that was. Now, the Minister may be aware, obviously the member for Mansfield is not aware, that during the last Parliament I continually pressed the government for a fairer deal on the MPS. In fact, I was knocked back at every single opportunity. But credit where's credit's due to this Labour government. They've stuck by their word, and the members of the Mine Workers Pension Scheme are a lot better off under this Labour government due to the extra money in their pay packet. I'll certainly give way.
Time is of the essence. While we may differ on these issues, colleagues across this House represent constituents who continue to suffer from this historic injustice created by the honourable member's former Tory government. Thousands of miners have died without the justice, with 2,000 passing every year. This is about fairness. This government has acted, but does this member agree with me that the Labour government has a right to resolve this swiftly so that no more families wait in vain for this money?
I think the honourable member for intervention thinks he's a little bit confused, and probably needs a history lesson that there was a Labour government during the 90s for 13 years that could have put this right as well. You know, it works both ways, so it's just unfair to blame both just the Conservative government. I would blame both governments. But going back to the surplus from the MPS, yes, I thank the Labour government for giving the mine workers their much-deserved reserve fund. But I will just gently remind them that they should actually act and implement the full findings of the Baines report of 2021, which, by the way, is Reform UK's policy. Susan Edwards from Ashfield is a BCSSS pensioner, and she's asked me to keep pushing on this issue. She says that although women members never worked underground, their contribution should never be forgotten. Sue's right. Should never forget the contribution made by women at our collieries. There's about 800 members of the BCSSS in Ashfield. One of them is Paddy Gumley. He'll be watching this debate right now. He sent me an email yesterday, and it said, "Dear Lee, thank you for your email regarding the forthcoming debate on the BCSSS. We will watch out to ensure that the Treasury gives sensible answers to your questions, and hopefully will bring this matter to a satisfactory conclusion. We are quite happy for you to use our names should you think it's necessary. Again, I wish to advise you that I am now 80 years old and have recently been treated for cancer, so time is of the essence." Paddy says time is of the essence. I think we all know what Paddy means. In plain English, please give me my money before I die. None of us are getting any younger, and transferring the investment fund now to miners would allow pensioners to live a more dignified life in their final years. It would also put tens of millions of pounds back into the local coalfield communities, helping local shops and businesses prosper. And let's not forget, if they get this extra money, these pensioners will be taxed on this pension, on this extra revenue, which will go back to the Exchequer. Now, the trustees have made two simple requests: to return the £2.3 billion investment reserve to the members as soon as possible this year, and commit to review how any future surplus will be shared out after the investment reserve is returned. I am yet to find a Caulfield MP that does not agree with these simple requests. And most Caulfields now are represented by Labour MPs, so I'm really hopeful in the 4 years they're still here that they will put pressure on the Treasury and the government to provide justice to the members of the BCSSS. I'll give way, yeah.
I thank the honourable member for giving way, and I sincerely hope that many of you are here for more than the 4 years he just alluded to. I think the key point that he alludes to is the need for us to work effectively together, to recognise that we have a whole range of constituents that would benefit, as he has described, from the BCSSS being treated differently, and therefore do welcome the constructive way in which these benches are currently working.
Member for his intervention. Yes, I like to be constructive, not so constructive from the member of Mansfield who's used this debate to try and score some political points. I'm using this debate to try and get justice for the members of the BCSSS. But the trustees have, to be fair, been disappointed, not only with the previous Conservative government, but they're a little bit disappointed with this current Labour government, who they feel have dragged their heels when dealing with the BCSSS, as opposed to dealing with the mine workers pension scheme much quicker. We're all families, and we're all ex-miners, sorry. We're all ex-mine workers, and we should be treated fairly. I know the trustees have met with the Minister today, and have spoken to the Chief Integrated Funding Advisor, and the feedback I am getting is that it was a positive meeting with the Minister, who once appeared to be very receptive to the request put forward by the trustees, but stopped short of saying that she fully supports the trustees' requests. There is a very simple solution to all of this. Just give us our money back. It's our money. And let's discuss the future surplus sharing agreements. Us ex-miners should not be a cash cow for the Treasury. I could go into all the facts and figures during this debate, but it's a simple debate. It's very simple. It's about giving back the mining community what is owed. Not only did the miners of the past help create the Labour Party, but they also gave their money to the cause through their union donations. It's time to pay back the miners. They should be no excuse. Imagine two brothers in their 70s who spent 40 years each down the pit. One's in the MPS and one's in the BCSSS. They've worked side by side, underground. The brother in the MPS has just had a 50% uplift in his pension, thanks to this Labour government. But the one in the BCSSS has had nothing. That cannot be right. It's not fair. I hear people in this bubble in Westminster say that young people wouldn't go down the pit these days, but you're all wrong, every single one of you. In the Caulfield communities, mining, hard graft, and a sense of working class pride are in our DNA. And when the time comes for a mining community to step forward and go back underground, then the descendants of our brave miners will do their duty. And that time will come, mark my words. In the meantime, it's time for this place to deliver. It's time to deliver justice for the miners. I would like to hear the Minister, Madam Deputy Speaker, from that dispatch box, state that she fully supports the trustees' two main requests, and that she agrees with me that the whole of the investment reserve fund should be shared out and not just part of it. There was a saying when I worked underground, when all the pits were shut in, and the saying was, "Have we heard out, duck?" Well, that's what ex-miners are saying right now to their pit mates. So I say to the Minister, who I know has been speaking to the Treasury and the trustees, have you heard out, duck?
Minister Sarah Jones.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the honourable member for securing this debate, and I welcome the opportunity to set out the government's position on the BCSSS. There are a lot of honourable members attending this debate, and many have long associations with the coalfield communities they represent, and I know that this is an incredibly important issue to many people across the country. It's also a matter of great importance to me, and I am really pleased to be speaking to the House following the meeting I had with the BCSSS trustees this afternoon.
Natalie Fleet. Thank you. When we speak of the mine workers' pension, we speak of everyone who sustained our pits, like my constituent Anthony Peck, who joined the scheme aged 17, and Kevin Jowell automatically enrolled when he became a deputy without any consultation. Does the Minister agree that everyone deserves fair pension and compensation for the $3.2 billion that the Treasury has received to date? Sarah Jones.
I'm going to thank my honourable friend for her contribution. Of course, we believe that everybody deserves a fair pension. I totally agree with her, and I want to set out where we have got to. As members will be aware, this Labour government committed in its manifesto to end the injustice of the mine workers' pension scheme, a commitment that I was incredibly proud to deliver on last October. We committed to transfer the Investment Reserve Fund back to members and review the surplus arrangements so that the mine workers who powered our country receive a fairer pension. And I was incredibly proud that after only 3 months in power, the Chancellor announced the transfer of that Investment Reserve Fund at the budget in October. This was the actions of a Labour government overturning an historic justice that previous government had failed to act on. The transfer of 1.5... Yes.
Can I thank the Minister for giving way? Does she agree with me that it is thanks to campaigners such as Bobby Cleland in my own constituency and local party that we have managed to succeed in having the MPS result and moving towards resolution and seeing that money paid out to those communities such as in the coalfields in my constituency, and thanks to people like Alan Kenny in my constituency who is leading the campaign in Scotland on the BCSSS. I hope she will be able to give us some good news, but do you agree that it is these former miners who are always standing up for their communities and still fighting now for the justice that they deserve?
Can I thank my honourable friend? Of course, he's right, and I want to thank everybody who has campaigned and worked so long on the mine workers' pension, and everybody who has been in touch with me and with colleagues across the House on the BCSSS. One of the most humbling events I've been to in my political life was speaking to former miners following the announcement on the mine workers' pension, and I am incredibly grateful to the many people who have campaigned and are getting in touch and are showing us how important this is, and of course we completely understand it. I will give way.
Thank the Minister for giving way. This is a new topic to me personally. I was contacted by a constituent whose late husband, a good friend of mine, Michael Green, actually worked for British Coal at the time, and he too was passionate that this money should be returned to the miners. So does the Minister agree with me that we need to get on with this and get this to happen as quickly as possible?
Minister.
We are certainly moving as fast as we can, and I'll explain sort of where the process has got up to, and I hope that members will be reassured. The transfer of £1.5 billion from the mine workers' pension boosted pensions, I should say, by 32%. An average increase of £29 a week for each member, and the member raised the point of this is not just money into people's pockets, it's money into local communities, and that is incredibly important, and I understand that in the context of the BCSSS, of course, in exactly the same way. So my officials are working really closely with the trustees of the mine workers' pension on the review of the future surplus sharing arrangements, and we hope to come forward with proposals and agreements on that soon. Having worked closely with the coalfield communities on the delivery of the mine workers' pension, I completely recognise the strength of feeling on the BCSSS. Yes.
Thanks very much for giving me. I've got to place on record my sincere thanks on behalf of my constituents and people who work in the mining industry across the country for the fantastic work the Minister has done in relation to the finances in the Mine Workers Pension Scheme. Might the Minister be able to inform this House what the main differences are between the MPS receiving the money and what the challenges are with regard to the BCSSS?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his kind words, and I will exactly do that and set out what the challenges are and the differences are. So having a process of work ongoing with the mine workers scheme and working out how we do surplus sharing going forward, we are now, even though it wasn't a manifesto commitment, working on BCSSS and what we do in that space. So I wrote to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury in February and secured his agreement to undertake a similar review to the BCSSS, and that review is now well underway. Now, the schemes are not identical, they are different, and the main difference being there's no surplus sharing arrangement in the BCSSS currently. And that is because they were removed in 2015 following 2 deficit valuations, and the situation at that time meant that members were unlikely to realise any increases to their pensions for a decade or more, and the government risked having to find new money to fund pensions, so that there was changes made. An agreement was reached with the then government that bonus pension increases would be paid for 3 years, and the scheme would invest to ensure that pensions could be paid, and with the aim of returning the reserve to the government in 2033. So that is the main difference. I met with the BCSSS trustees, to whom I am very grateful. We are working well together, and we will continue to do so. I met with them first in April, in which I shared my determination to move at pace. I know that's a government saying, isn't it, we say, but I mean genuinely move as fast as we can on the review of the scheme and start that process for the government and the trustees to do a piece of work where we jointly commissioned analysis from the Government Actuary Department to inform our decision making. Yes.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and just on that point, I've heard from so many of my constituents who are affected by this BCSSS how an advanced age many people are and the real need for speed. I really appreciate the Minister setting out how committed she is to getting this sorted as quickly as possible, and I would appreciate hearing any further efforts she could do to expedite it. Thank you.
Minister.
I completely appreciate the comments that my honourable friend is making. I think everybody in this House shares them, and I feel that very strongly, and I'm very committed to doing exactly that. We have recently received the analysis from the Government Actuary on the options for making a transfer to scheme members, and I then, because we've received information, had a meeting with the trustees today to hear their views on that analysis. And at that meeting I committed to move at speed. My officials are meeting the Treasury tomorrow. We are going to put a recommendation to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and I made a commitment to meet the trustees again before the summer break, so we are continuing to make progress as fast as we can.
I thank the Minister for giving way. I've been proud to support the BCSSS campaign since long before I became an MP, and I've continued since, and I'd like to pay tribute to the campaigners in my Cannock Chase constituency, including ex-miner Tony Jones, who gave me a badge which I wear with pride. I'm really grateful to the Minister for her engagement with BCSSS trustees and us as Coalfield MPs. However, many of my constituents are often elderly, in poor health, they're desperate for a resolution. Given that the investment reserve is already held within the scheme and its return wouldn't require any new public spending, will the Minister continue to work hard to make sure this money, these deferred pensions, are rightly returned as quickly as possible to their rightful owners?
Minister.
That is certainly what we are working to do, because the two schemes are slightly different. The way that the Treasury has to interact and think about these things is slightly different, but we have done this Government Actuary process. We have met with the trustees today. We're going to now put our recommendation to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. I know a lot of my colleagues on this side of the House are talking to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury whenever they can about this issue as well. I hope that honourable colleagues will appreciate that whilst I have a desire to move at speed. We also need to make sure that we get this absolutely right, that any spending decisions are taken on the basis of careful consideration, especially given the role that the government has as the guarantor to both the Mine Workers Pension Scheme and the BCSSS. But I want to provide assurances to all honourable members that I am doing all I can to reach an agreement and improve the conditions for members as soon as possible. And we'll give away.
Thank the Minister for giving way. She's been, I think she's been very good today actually at the dispatch box, so I thank her for that, and a lot of positive things have come out of this adjournment debate. But just one question, is the scheme currently running at a surplus, and if so, by how much?
Minister. So I wouldn't give figures. I mean, the scheme is doing well, and that is in part because of the very, the trustees and the actions that they have taken, and the investments and the process that they have undertaken. So it is, whilst the 2015 situation caused there to be a change in the way it was managed, it is now running well, and people can be reassured about that. So I recognise that for many in coalfield communities, delivery on the Mine Workers Pension Scheme has only heightened the sense of injustice for the BCSSS. I hear that, I feel that, and I am determined to take action on it. And yes.
Thank you so much to the Minister for giving way. With the scheme looking really quite healthy now, I just wonder if for my 719 BCSSS members, whether the Minister has that kind of oomph to be able to push it forward and expedite it as quickly as possible to get them justice.
Minister. I certainly have oomph. Yes, and I'm working as fast as I can on this. We could talk, but I think I won't now, about sort of wider support we're trying to offer to people in our former coalfield communities. There is a whole raft of government interventions that we are taking to try and support people, but instead we're taking into account.
I do thank the Minister for giving way. My constituent, Robert Ferguson, echoed many of the points made by the constituent of the honourable gentleman from Ashfield about the difference between those families that work side by side and one being benefited and one not. I do wonder, given the Minister I know has a rather full portfolio at the moment on many other things that I constantly nag her about, whether or not, while we wait for the Treasury, which is of course known for its speed in making decisions, whether or not there is any interim arrangements that might be able to put in place that gives some of the surplus back to the BCSSS, or something that allows there to be a demonstration of progress while we're waiting for the Chief Secretary to come to a decision.
Minister. I wouldn't want to give the impression that this decision is just waiting on Darren to go, Chief Secretary of the Treasury to go, yes. It's not. We have to go through the correct processes in order to get this over the line, because it wasn't in the manifesto. It's a different scheme. We have to go through the proper processes, and I hope he understands that. I think if we were to give a part of the surplus back and not all of it, that would probably cause more trouble than not, just because people would not, why would we want to do that? We want to resolve this properly, and we want to resolve it quickly. The two outcomes that the honourable member referred to, in which the trustees want, I think are goals that we all share, but we have to do this properly. We have to go through the right processes, and we have to make sure we are not putting words into the mouth of our Treasury officials and colleagues before it is right to do so. So my commitment is to work at pace on this. As I said, my officials are meeting the Treasury tomorrow. We're meeting the trustees before the summer. I hear and understand the voices.
Adam Jogi. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. Two quick points. One, as she seeks to carry out those meetings, and I wish them well, I wonder whether she'd give consideration to meeting some of us from coalfield communities just to facilitate that conversation. And secondly, she's just touched on the industrial strategy. Can I urge her? She knows my views both on the BCSSS and the importance that many people in Newcastle Lyme feel, but that industrial strategy must be felt by the people, not just in Newcastle Lyme, but up and down our country, particularly in the coalfield community. So as that is finalised, give a thought to us, because it's really important, and we hope she'll find time to meet us soon.
Minister.
I'm always very happy to meet my colleagues and the honourable member in particular, and very happy to meet any iteration of BCSSS, any who either is in receipt of it or is campaigning, and I'm always happy and always have my door open. And he's right, of course, our industrial strategy needs to do what we haven't had for so long to grow our economy across the country, and not just in certain areas, and we want industrial strategy to do just that. I would just end by saying that as politicians, we know that people find it very hard to trust us and what we're going to deliver, in part because they have been let down so many times over so many years. I hope that the fact that we delivered the Mine Workers Pension Scheme within 3 months of coming to office will, and I understand the frustration, and I understand the need for speed, and I understand these are people who are getting older, and we know that many people passed away before they could get the Mine Workers Pension Scheme. The same will be true in terms of long period of time that we've been talking about these issues. But now I hope people can see that we mean it when we are looking to work at pace on the BCSSS.
I'm grateful to the Minister, and I'm mindful both of the fact that honourable members don't have to be at German debates, but it doesn't say everything. That there's not a single, there's a formal one, but there's not a single Conservative MP here this evening on this really important issue, not just in Newcastle line, but up and down our United Kingdom.
Minister.
Well, I would let anybody watching the debate to draw their own conclusions on that front. But it's there to see. I want to end by thanking the honourable member for securing this debate and for all the representations from many honourable friends today. This Labour government is absolutely committed to addressing the issue of the BCSSS, and I look forward to updating members on our progress towards improving pensions for all former miners and correcting these historical injustices.
The question is that this House do now adjourn.